Okay, just so everybody knows, Pam got the YouTube live stream started, and the other 4 council members are waiting to be let in, so we should be able to start right on time. Pam just has to go between rooms when she gets the live stream to start, so just stand by. Mayor, we have everybody in, but I am not sure if Pam is in front of her computer to call roll. So everything else is up and running though, and the live stream is live as well. So
Okay. I've got 6:30 now, so let's go ahead and start the work session and call that to order at this point.
I can call the roll, Mayor, if you'd like, if Pam's going in between. I can't see if she's in front of her computer.
Oh, we just need to call that when the full meeting starts?
Okay, yep, that works too.
Okay, we can just do that. We go ahead and start the work session now, then we'll do the roll at 7.
Okay. Do you want me to introduce, Mayor?
Yes, please, if you could.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so on tonight's agenda, we have a work session that is going to be covering the fire station consolidation project that was recently completed. Actually, it was completed quite some time ago. So we've got Chief Neidhart here. We've also got a representative, Tim Beement from App Architecture that did the work. And what we have planned for tonight is what was included in the packet, the agenda packet, are the renderings as well as potential proposed floor plan. And then finally, there is a probable cost summary. So just to kind of frame this up for everybody before we turn it over, in the 2020 budget, we had earmarked some funds to look at the feasibility of consolidating fire stations. Right now we have one located up on West Franklin, and then we have our one that's downtown on Northwest Street. Our current fire station, that's the more traditional layout, is the one that's on West Franklin Street, and it does not have the space for the offices that are needed. So at some point, the city purchased the downtown property on Northwest Street, and it is currently used to house the offices during the day. So our fire crews are there during the day, and then in the evening they move up to what we call Station 2 on West Franklin Street. And then they have the sleeping quarters there, and that's where the firefighters stay overnight in case there are calls. So at Fire Station 1 downtown, we also have a couple of pieces of equipment down there so that they are ready for calls during the day while they're housed at that location. And there's also a couple pieces of equipment up at Fire Station 2 for evening response. So quite some time before I had gotten here, and Chief Neidhart might remember the year, some of the council might remember the year, but I know that Mark Schlogheck, when he was city manager, there was the possibility of building all new fire station, all under one roof, that would have been further down on West Franklin Street. So there's still a piece of property that's for sale, and the city kind of looked at that and looked at what it would cost to build a brand new station. So we do have some research that was done there, but that was when Chief Scott Hall was here. So we do have research on what it would cost to build a new one, although it's slightly dated. And then this is a look at what it would cost to consolidate fire stations just for consideration. So my thought was tonight, just in the essence of time, we would have Tim from App Architecture kind of go through what he has drawn up. He will talk about kind of the process, how he arrived at this proposal that's in front of everybody, and then kind of take some questions and answers from council. And then the thought is that after this proposal is made and the information is reviewed and digested by council, that on November 23rd, we will regroup and we will have a work session with just council to kind of talk about the information that we got from the CIC session as well as this one, and to just kind of talk amongst each other about how we kind of feel about both of those presentations and any next steps. So with that being said, if everybody is okay with that, then I will go ahead and hand it over to Tim, who is going to be screen sharing and kind of walking us through this.
Okay, well, thank you, Melissa, and good evening, all the council members. Appreciate the time this evening to go through this with you. I'm going to move relatively quickly, so I understand you've looked at the plans and elevations, but I'm going to give you, like she said, a little bit more of the background of how we arrived at that solution. App Architecture has been around. We're in our 37th year. We started as, we're very well known as a healthcare design firm, and when I joined the firm about 15 years ago, I brought a lot of my all of my health and fire station experience, design experience that I had, and I've continued to do that. We're up in Inglewood, so not far away, and just really proud to serve those who deliver all levels of care, from the first responder, diagnosis, treatment, and healing. So some of the stations that we've done over the last several years, we did all Kettering's, City of Kettering's 4 stations for their renovation and basically a redo of really all their station locations to consolidate from a 7 location model to a 4 station model. Brookville's fire station just completed Germantown's station down here. Too new for a photo at this point, but if you're familiar with Germantown, we did a large addition to their public safety building, and we moved City Hall out and made it just fire and police. In Beaver Creek Township, that station is just starting construction now up at Trayvine and Fairground roads, and then we have done Inglewood Government Center some of this back. So I've been doing fire station design since 1996, and so many of the stations that have been done in the Dayton area, I've had my hand in it in some form or another. So the existing conditions of station number 2, a couple of different photos, front view from West Franklin. Here's the back side, these fueling pumps. That's key. We'll come back to that in terms of trying to we really worked around keeping that, because it really serves an integral role in fueling school buses and all the city vehicles and things. So keeping that was priority in the location of this, in the solution. You can see, we've got the main drag north is up in this photo, and intersecting street here. We've got the parking area that's immediately right up against the station. It turns out that there's 2 parcels that are here, and I'll show you that and that's what you've seen on that site plan, but I'll review that. So there is some additional room here to work with. And as I first started looking at the site, I thought, this building it has good bones, and it definitely is worth saving and adding on to. A lot of times I go into buildings and immediately know that you're going to be throwing good money after bad. But in this situation, the building's been well maintained. It was built very well to begin with, and there's no reason, and you've got the land, so there's no reason to come up with a solution that felt that was going to work for your needs. Some of the interior shots, some of the things that we look for in terms of deficiencies are, turnout gear that's inside the bays is really a no-no in the industry standard. So trying to pull vital equipment out, SCBA compressor in the bays, the bays are just super tight. Space is at a premium, and I'll get into that just a second here in terms of some of the other issues. Lockers, just space in general just pretty tight and not meeting today's standards for fire station design. Of course, we're looking at now not only today, but a solution that's going to last for the next 50 years at least. Some of the design fundamentals that we integrate into all of our fire station work, which are really considered the standards today that design is based on, are the station ergonomics and the layout and flow, cancer prevention in the form of decontamination of equipment and gear as it comes back from calls, cancer prevention in terms of bay exhaust to try to keep the amount of exhaust and contaminants that are caused by the vehicles entering and leaving the bays at a minimum, because it's all about the firefighter and the EMS professionals, and their health and well-being is premium, is priority. Tornado shelter design is something that's now required in a station, in all new stations since the end of 2017 in the new building code. So because we would be renovating this significantly, the tornado shelter would absolutely be required. And then PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is really becoming more and more recognized as a real issue that has to be dealt with. So station ergonomics, this is just an example floor plan where we do everything we can to get the bunk rooms as close to the apparatus bays, because response time starts in the station. It's not when they leave, when the medical EMTs and firemen leave the bays in their vehicle. It actually starts within the building itself. So very clear, and as much as possible direct routes, to the apparatus bays, to the equipment is at a premium here, with distinct zones of the hot zone, which we consider the decontamination area, where these areas will continue to be, we can consider contaminated at all times, because that's what the vehicles coming back from calls. You're not going to able to clean this completely in terms of the level of cleanliness that you'll have inside the actual living quarters. So we really have three zones, which is what we consider the hot zone. We've got sort of the decontamination zone where we're actually doing the cleaning, and then the idea is to keep all those contaminants on this side of the station, to where no contaminants are being brought back into the actual living space. So you'll see how we accomplish that in the solution. Effective decontamination, like I said, we've got, with putting in an adequate cleanup shower and stainless steel countertops, really about infection control, especially with all the medic calls, and now with the pandemic and COVID and trying to get everything desanitized. It's just a critical, absolutely critical step and a requirement within stations now. It's always been there, but it's even more so now. And I've been doing this, like I said, since 1996, and we've always designed these types of rooms, but now it's becoming it's just so, because medic calls are really the primary numbers of calls that are happening today. It really is about infection control, and that's something that we deal with all the time in our hospital design. So bringing that level of expertise is real critical. This just shows a quick diagram of the type of processes of where you have turnout gear, cleaning turnout gear, having decontamination shower for crews before they exit back into the living quarters, and with a nice decontamination room that's part of that flow. Exhaust systems, there is no exhaust system to speak of, within the station as it exists in the apparatus space. So introducing those types of systems to the building are critical. And then tornado shelter design, and typically we'll take a toilet room or a space like that to use, that'll be integrated, that'll be used 99.9% of the time for its normal use. And the toilet room is perfect because it always has open floor space. And then that one, and we've all been through the tornadoes in Dayton, so I understand. It even becomes. I used to think, well, it'll ever happen. Well, we know that it will at some point. So we have to be ready, and it's about protecting the crews, and they're the priceless elements here in station design. And then PTSD, and that is, it really comes down to having spaces for decompression when folks come back from calls, and have the ability to relax, talk about their experiences, because I don't think any of us can really quite understand what it's like to go out to a car crash and see just some of the horrors that they see every day, and that's their job. And so having spaces where people can come back, and it's really home away from home, and having that ability to really just be prepared for the next call, because you just never know what's coming next. So we did a building program here that listed essentially all of our existing spaces, and then all the suggested spaces that really are missing from this current station. So in this first column, we had the existing areas, and so any place there's a number is where we had an existing area. So the building started out is currently 5,286 square feet, which is right down here at the bottom. Then we added essentially a column for all the areas that are proposed and what they should be. If they're undersized, if we use them again, how much larger should they be? Created a new square footage column. So we ended up with a recommended square footage at about 11,000 square feet. So we're essentially doubling, a little more than doubling the square footage of the building. So here's the diagrammatic site plan, and in pink is the existing fire station footprint. You can see that in the light blue, we're kind of bookending the existing building with the apparatus, a new apparatus bay, drive-through being proposed here on the west side, and then all the living quarters, and then the fire headquarters administration down here at the lower half. That fueling station is right here, and so trying to create a space where we can have some outdoor patio space off of the living quarters, which is something I've always done. Part of that whole decompression aspect of being able to get outside, get some fresh air, do a little grilling. That's critical. It's a little tight back here, but we do think that we can have a nice outdoor space, shield it, and with a wall from the fueling aspects here. But the idea is that we can maintain. We're basically adding a drive. What's currently parking over on this west side would be the return drive, and be used by school buses and other vehicles to come around, fuel, and then exit back out on the Linda Drive. And of course, the main apparatus exiting point from the bays would be right here on the West Franklin Street. There is a drainage storm culvert that runs under the building, kind of on a diagonal point. Unfortunately, it's not very deep, because we can see the inlet over here as it picks up drainage from the northern properties. And the idea would be is we would reroute that storm to be able to get it underneath out of the building footprint, underneath the building, the parking area, and then reconnect down at this end to the outlet point under at West Franklin Street and Cross, and then it empties into a detention, a pretty deep ditch down drainage swale at the other side of Franklin Street. So we have new parking, and you can see the property lines are in red. So there are two parcels that have been consolidated into this total site footprint. So with the floor plan, what I have outlined here in red is the building itself, the existing building. So you can see where we've added all the spaces and the apparatus bay on the west side. The total square footage, actually, with the design, we projected it to be around 11,000 square feet. It's about 10,556 with the total. What I want to show you is here's that same diagram I showed earlier with basically the hot zones, the decontamination zones in yellow, and then the green would be all of is the living space. So very distinct bays now separated, and we have a new turnout gear room we've created, because this is a flow-through turnout gear room model, meaning that the crews do pick up their turnout gear as they exit the building every time and come back and put that turnout gear back. But that turnout gear needs to be washed now, and so we've got a decon space right here in the center, and then a cleanup shower, decontamination shower, actually, for the crews to use before they exit back out into the green zone, if you will. And then pathways. Now, since it's a renovation addition, we're doing what we can in terms of trying to make these pathways as straight and direct as possible. But from the living quarters, we've got a path right through the open space of the dining and living day room out to the bays. We've got the secondary path coming from the living quarters, which we can pick up the meeting space and come in through the turnout gear room and out into the bays. Or if the chief or assistant chief coming from the headquarters can come through and get right out in the bays. So we've also got a change in elevation. There's about a 6 or 8 inch step down from the existing building to the existing apparatus bay floor. That is a hazard, not only from a fall tripping hazard because it's a single step, but we also have to be concerned about Americans with Disabilities Act and just having those accessible pathways. So everything is ramped now at this point. So all the hallways have been made a little bit longer so we can get an integrated slope ramp, if you will, at all these points into the bays. And then, so back to the floor plan. Again, we've got the new apparatus bay drive-through. We can get ladder in here with a trailer. We've got the medics for both the primary medic and engine that would be used on most calls. First run, turnout gear room, like I mentioned, in the decon area. We've got a report room right here that looks out into the apparatus bays. And then down here, the training area, we've got a room for about 25 people, which can be separated off from a security standpoint. So this room could be open to other members of the public if you desired. That way people could come in a vestibule. There's a locked door here that would go actually into fire headquarters, but they would have use of 2 restrooms in the meeting room space. That could be, again, just separated from the daily operations of the station from a security standpoint. And then this shower would be the tornado shelter. So it's a large, oversized room, large enough to accommodate the folks that would be in a training, for example, or the normal size of the crew for sure. And then we've got individual dorm rooms. This is a feature that we use at the Kettering fire stations, where we've got lockers that are actually pass-through that can be accessed from both sides. So if you've got a crew and a shift that is still sleeping and another crew member gets in for the next shift a little bit early, they can access their locker and not disturb that crew member who's trying to hopefully catch up on a little bit of sleep. And we've got a nice physical or a PT room for physical training here in the center. And this is actually built around the existing mechanical room in the building. So we're preserving that because it's very expensive to try to move those utilities around. So we're using that as a starting point as we started growing out from the existing building. And then we've got an administrative conference room, and then the chief and assistant chief's offices at that point. So that's the basic layout. And we also have that locker. So I had that picture of that locker area. Well, now we've got a really nice, generous space here for lockers. Because that way you're accommodating both your part-time and your full-time members as they're coming in. And so that we're finding that's really becoming pretty much of a norm now in most of the stations, is to have a nice central locker area as well. And then that's off the physical, the physical training room, to where you can work out and you could take a shower and use that locker space all together. And the tower, the hose tower that you may remember is there in the building. We would just turn that into the SCBA, the self-contained breathing apparatus compressor. I showed that in that one photograph. That would actually then move back here into a nice area that would be separated from all the bay exhaust and the things that are contaminants that are there in the bay. And so from that, we moved right into what was the design of this building, what could it look like, and we really saw the existing hip roof that's there on the building as a great starting point, but then with the ability to add some flat roof areas around it and really look at a contemporary design. So we would be proposing to reclad that, take that asphalt shingle roof off and put a metal roof on it in its place. And we're looking at masonry and metal panels as really the 2 elements on the exterior. And here's another view, and a view that you haven't seen yet, that I want to show you here is a rendered view of the exterior. Once we add all the pretty aspects of the some landscaping and some lighting and effects and things, you can really see how just really cool this building could be, and really make a statement for the city of Bellbrook, and just because it is at such a prominent location. And you know, going through this whole exercise, I feel very strongly that spending the money on doing a renovation addition is definitely a great use and fiscally responsible, because the space is here. Like I said, the building has great bones. We can solve nearly every problem, every deficiency that we see in the existing layouts, and get headquarters and get all the aspects and get the apparatus that they need for the department to operate efficiently. It can all be done here. And relatively speaking, you know, I hadn't really, I can certainly provide some updated information on cost of new construction for fire stations. But just in my, if I were to look at a example of about the same square footage, if we were going to build a station new, it would probably end up being the bays we would make larger. So it would be a larger footprint, but you're probably looking at least 30 or 40% more just for the construction cost. And that's not the land cost at all. That's just the cost of construction. So you can get essentially a brand new looking facility for you know, I believe a very reasonable cost for doing a renovation and addition like this. So that's all I have. Anybody have any specific questions now?
Yeah, hi, this is TJ Hoke. I just wanted to ask, let's say 20 years from now, Bellbrook has experienced significant growth. Is there potential to continue to grow this fire station as is with the land available? If it says, hey, we needed another bay.
Okay, so let me go back and let's look at that site plan real quick. So here's, I think one of the things that, you know, I tried to do I did a solution, and we did a solution here that used your existing property. This drive, in talking with the chief, in the fact that that's DP&L has some equipment back here and things. There's been some comments made that perhaps this could be acquired in some form. And if that were the case, then we could actually get our return access through that drive. We could then essentially add another bay here.
Okay.
So the possibility is there, yes.
Okay.
So Tim, I see that the average square foot cost was like $240 something. Does that include like all the fixtures, the bedding, everything where they can just walk in and start operating, or where does that break down at?
Okay, so the 241 is construction cost only. Okay, so we do have what we consider soft costs, which are then added on to that 241. So that's everything from, you know, there's probably going to be the need for temporary housing for the crews potentially, to where we may have to have a you know, an on-site trailer on site while we do, because this will have to be a phased construction.
Yeah, sure. I saw that part. I just meant like once the building is complete, do we have to then buy the furniture, or does that include the furniture?
No, so furniture would be another add. Any like fitness equipment would be additional. We've got construction testing and inspections that have to happen, like IT and access control. There's a whole other segment of soft costs that aren't included with that $241 square foot number. Okay.
And how does that fare as far as comparison to square footage cost across the Midwest?
So in terms of renovation addition is a hard one in terms of comparing a renovation addition cost per square foot, because the variable is how much work you're doing to existing. But I really like to compare this to new construction, because essentially you're going to have more or less, there's so much new on this building that I think that's a good comparison, because that's your other alternative. And you're looking at least $300 a square foot for that new construction cost. And that's, like, again, that's construction cost only. So that's really looking at an apples to apples comparison.
Thank you.
I am impressed. I've been through Kettering and absolutely admire the new fire departments there.
Oh, thank you.
They are so pretty, and this is totally different. It's
It
extreme.
is.
It's modern, but it's modern is goes out of style very quickly. Our high school was built modern, and the one that my daughters went to, and it's really antiquated looking now because of those funky roof lines.
Okay.
The Kettering fire departments are traditional. They're classic, and Bellbrook prides itself on its historic preservation and look. Don't know how that would render into this situation, because the current building is somewhat not quite as modern looking as this is. I mean, this is beautiful, but just wondering how it would look to do something more along the lines of what Kettering did. It's a traditional look.
Right. Well, you know, and we can, you know, we have the ability to make a building, a floor plan can really be almost anything in terms of how it,
Yes.
you know, so absolutely, you know, we're perfectly capable, more than capable of doing a more historic, you know, timeless architecture, if you will, like as we've demonstrated in Kettering. This building, the reason we went more with the more contemporary feel is that, first of all, it makes the cost of construction and the integration of the new versus the old it allows us a lot more opportunity when we have the ability to use some flat roofs and things. Because many times we might end up having to actually tear off the old roof and completely reframe the roof of the existing building, which then starts to get to a point where, well, if we're gonna change the building that much, why are we keeping it? So this was an attempt to try to keep, from a cost standpoint, be as efficient as possible.
Okay.
You know, the building was what you would consider mid-century modern at the time when it was built.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and so we tried to, you know, stick with that sort of feel of the building, but absolutely this building could certainly look, we can make it look very different than what's proposed here. And it would have its own set of cost implications and things as well.
Sure, I understand.
But yes.
I personally have a big problem with flat roofs because
Okay.
they always leak. I haven't seen one yet that doesn't leak. Have methods improved so that is not a true statement anymore?
Well, it's funny because I just had this conversation with another department just last week, and that's one of the first questions I always ask before I get into what this thing looks like in 3 dimensions is, what's your temperature for flat roofs versus pitched roofs? And I have to say that the majority of clients that we work for do say, well, we'd rather just have pitched roofs. And so that's why a lot of our stations have pitched roofs on it. But the chief and I had that conversation, and I said, hey, you know, would you be open to, do you think the city would be open to exploring something a little more contemporary with some flat roofs? And, you know, he had given us the green light to do that. And so the roofing has come a long way in terms of the materials and methods that are available out there. There's millions and millions of square feet of flat roof out there for industrial buildings and things that, you know, it's really in how it's detailed and how it's installed to whether it's going to be leak-free or not.
There's your big secret is the installation.
Yeah. Hey, at this time, it's about 7:03, and I hate to interrupt, but Tim, thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
At this point in time, I direct anybody on council that's got any additional questions, go ahead and forward those on to Melissa, and we can start an ongoing dialogue with Tim. But Tim, we appreciate your presentation, and thanks for your insights, and looks like some good ideas, and I'm a big fan of the Kettering buildings as well. So thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Let's see, where am
This time, if everybody's ready, let's go ahead and,
I? Oh,
well, there?
I don't
Okay.
know what happened. Am I still here? Okay.
This time I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bellbrook City Council. Today is Columbus Day, October the 12th, 2020. Will you please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag,
Flag
United
of the
States
United States of America,
and to
to the republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
liberty,
and
and
justice
justice.
for all.
Okay, thank you. Pam, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Hoke,
Present.
Mr. Havens.
Here.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Present.
Mr. Greenwood,
Here,
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Here,
Mr. Edwards,
Here.
Mayor Schweller.
Here. Thank you. Everyone in front of them should have the minutes of our last meeting, which is September the 28th. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to those minutes?
None, Mayor.
I'm there.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and accept the minutes as submitted. Next item up is the mayor announcements. No specific announcements, but we do have some annual employee recognition awards. Tonight, we have 4 employees who have made some milestone anniversaries with the city of Bellbrook. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to be there with us tonight, but they are Anthony Bizzaro, 25 years of service with Bellbrook. Beverly Doherty, 20 years of service with Bellbrook. John Dalton, 5 years of service with Bellbrook. And Matt Sanderman, 5 years of service with Bellbrook. We want to congratulate these employees on their service with the city of Bellbrook. And sticking with our past practices, we've given them a gift of something that's been acquired or purchased within one of our vendors in the city of Bellbrook to kind of keep things local as much as possible. Anything to add to that, Melissa?
I will add that Anthony Bizzaro is in our fire department, and the other 3 employees, Beverly, John, and Matt, are all in our service department.
Okay, thank you. Again, congratulations to the employees on their milestone anniversaries. Tonight, we have no public hearings, but we do have some introductions of ordinances. First up on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-7, Councilwoman Middlestetter. You're on mute right now.
unmute.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, ordinance 2020-7. An ordinance adopting new chapter 260 guidelines for members of boards, commissions, and committees of the City of Bellbrook Municipal Code. Whereas Section 8 of the Charter for the City of Bellbrook states that all terms, number of members, procedures for appointment and replacement of members, duties, and powers of boards and commissions thus created by the council shall be prescribed by ordinance, and whereas City Council for the City of Bellbrook has not previously adopted legislation establishing the procedures outlined in Section 8 of the Charter, and whereas procedures were developed by the Community Affairs Committee of Council and reviewed and approved at a meeting on September 22nd, 2020, and are attached hereto as Exhibit A. And whereas a new chapter 260 guidelines for members of boards, commissions, and committees shall be added to the City of Bellbrook Municipal Code. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains, Section 1, that the following chapter 260 guidelines for members of boards, commissions, and committees, and attached hereto as Exhibit B, is hereby adopted and incorporated into the City of Bellbrook Municipal Code. Section 2, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this ordinance were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that any and all deliberations of this council that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including but not limited to Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. All yours, Mayor. Or Melissa, whoever wants to do this.
Okay, I will note, Pam, something that I just caught. Section 1 says Exhibit B, and we'll need to update that to Exhibit A, and then it actually says Exhibit B on the exhibit. So we just need to make that consistent. So I'm not sure what happened there, but just so that it's noted that that needs to be corrected. So one of the things that we had noticed kind of in our travels typically is that there is a section of the charter which says that guidelines for members of boards, commissions, and committees are supposed to be outlined in an ordinance. And we noticed that there was no ordinance. So that is why we are creating a new chapter, which is going to have all of the guidelines which are outlined in Exhibit A. So basically what we did was we had drafted these and had presented them to the Community Affairs Committee for review. And that is what is presented here was what they had reviewed and approved. So basically this is spelling out all of the procedures in which are followed today, but just were never formalized by way of ordinance. So the authority is granted to the is granted to the city council in order to establish all of the different details as they are related to the boards and commissions which serve the city. And then that oversight is actually being handed off to the Community Affairs Committee, which has always been the body of council, which is interviewed and selected members of boards and commissions and things like that. So that's just solidifying that. And then there's a section that goes through the expectations of the different boards and commission members. Very basic expectations. You must come to meetings, conduct yourself in a professional manner. Things like that are all spelled out. And then there's also a section on reappointment because there had never really been any reappointment guidelines. So we did spell those out. And we also have a final section in there about removal. And basically, all of these actions would be recommended to council by Community Affairs Committee and then would be approved or denied by council as a whole by way of motion. So our municipal attorney did look at these guidelines, and now that they are in ordinance format, it's a starting point for us to be able to kind of modify these as needed, but it does actually put into writing by way of ordinance something that the charter has outlined previously and just was not ever formalized. So that's kind of the history behind this and kind of where we are now.
Thank you, Melissa. Does anyone in council have any questions or discussion on ordinance 2020-7?
Nothing for me.
Seeing none, can we have a motion, please?
I move that we adopt ordinance 2020-7.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Motion was made by Mrs. Middlestetter to introduce ordinance 2020-7 An ordinance adopting new section 260 guidelines for members of boards, commissions, and committees to the Bellbrook Municipal Code. This was seconded by Mr. Havens. Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Havens?
Yes.
Mr. Hoke?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
yes,
Mr. Edwards?
yes,
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is ordinance 2020-8. Dr. Van Veldhuizen, please.
All right, Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-8 is an ordinance amending section 18.20A, permitted signs general of the Bellbrook zoning code. Whereas the city of Bellbrook has adopted chapter 18.20A, permitted signs general, into the zoning ordinances for the city of Bellbrook. And whereas chapter 18.20A outlines standards for permitted signs within the city of Bellbrook. And whereas chapter 18.20A references in separate sections that signs related to an election shall be removed within 10 days following the conclusion of the event. And whereas it has been determined that such a regulation is unconstitutional. And whereas the city of Bellbrook desires to amend the zoning ordinances to ensure chapter 18.20A of the city of Bellbrook zoning code is compliant with state and federal law. Now therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby ordains. Section 1, that section 18.20A, permitted signs general of the city of Bellbrook zoning code, attached hereto as Exhibit A, be approved and is hereby adopted and incorporated into the city of Bellbrook Municipal Code, with deletion shown by brackets and strike through, and addition shown by italics and underlined. Section 2, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this ordinance were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that any and all deliberations of this council that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including, but not limited to, section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. In section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. And as my colleague said before, Melissa or Pam, over to you.
Okay, so this is one of those things that we had stumbled upon because we are actually doing a rewrite of 1820B, and this is 1820A in our zoning code as it relates to signs. And one of the things that really jumped out, especially since election season is in full swing upon us, in case anybody hadn't noticed, we do have provisions in our zoning code as it relates to temporary signs that are related to elections, and the required removal of those within 10 days after the conclusion of the event. So there was a court case. It was actually a several years ago. I will have that specific court case to cite for the adoption of the ordinance, just for reference. And so basically that was found that any removal of a political sign was found to be unconstitutional. So basically what we're doing is we're going through any of the sections where that is listed and we are striking through those. So there were a total of, I believe it's, 4 references to that in 1820A. So all we're doing is striking the language that was found to be unconstitutional. So again, I will make sure that I have that court case reference for the adoption or the public hearing of the ordinance at the next meeting.
Thank you, Melissa. Seems pretty straightforward. Does anyone at council have any questions or further discussion on ordinance 2020-8?
All I can say is it's a shame that we can't keep our lawns and get rid of that stuff once the event is over, but so be it.
Great.
Melissa, I recall there being several sections in our downtown village review related to signs as well as zoning. Does this do anything to clear any of those conflicts up?
You're talking about the downtown sign regulations? So that's all in 1820B. So there is a complete rewrite of 1820B, and it has to go through planning board and be recommended for approval by council. So because this was unconstitutional, we totally skipped planning board because it wouldn't have, you know, it would have just been cumbersome to say, what do you guys think? And then they approve. And so, I mean, since this was a legality, we just went ahead and just put it before council, especially given the time of year that we're in currently. So 1820B is the downtown revision, and it's been totally redrafted and is in the approval process.
Thanks.
So it's separate.
Any more comments or discussion?
So just to clarify, we have no standing for people to remove the temporary signs after events?
If it is a political sign in somebody's own personal lawn, we cannot request removal.
Okay.
Anything else? We have a motion regarding ordinance 2020-8.
I'll make a motion to accept it, Mayor.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute and I missed who seconded that.
TJ Hoke.
TJ, thank you. A motion was made by Dr. Van Veldhuizen to introduce ordinance 2020-8, an ordinance amending section 18.20A, permitted signs general of the Bellbrook zoning code, and this was seconded by Mr. Hoke. Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is ordinance 2020-9. Councilman Greenwood, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-9, an ordinance adopting the revised City of Bellbrook Personnel Manual. Whereas the city manager of the City of Bellbrook is authorized to promulgate personal rules and regulations for the employees of the City of Bellbrook pursuant to section 254.01 of the City of Bellbrook codified ordinances. And whereas the City of Bellbrook may adopt a personnel manual for the purpose of establishing certain policies and procedures for employees. And whereas the City of Bellbrook periodically reviews its personnel policies and procedures. And whereas the city has made revisions to the personnel manual that incorporates these policies. And whereas the city council for the City of Bellbrook desires to adopt the revised personnel manual. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains. Section 1, that the revised personnel manual attached hereunto as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference, setting the personnel policies and procedures for employees of the City of Bellbrook is hereby adopted. Section 2, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this council concerning and relating to the adoption of this ordinance were adopted in an open meeting of this council, and that any and all deliberations of this council that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including but not limited to section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, that this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. Melissa?
Okay, so this was actually brought before council at the last meeting in a draft form. So the version that you're seeing now is a cleaned up version. And I had also incorporated and included at the very beginning a summary of the changes so that council can very easily identify and understand those. changes and where they are. So what I did, because if you know anything about me, you know that I color code everything for ease of locating things and understanding of things. So what I had done is, this is an annual review of the personnel policy manual, and one of the things that that previously existed was we had our manual and then we had administrative policies that were separate. And I never really understood why those were separated, because most of those policies were always traditionally included in a manual. So for some reason, ours were separated. And so one of the things that I did was I had incorporated those policies into our actual manual so that it's one document, one spot. It's all approved by council. And I just thought that that was a little bit simpler. So anything that is in blue was the inclusion of a administrative policy that had previously existed. Some of them were very lengthy and wordy and kind of redundant with some other things that were in our manual. So I kind of tweaked some of those to either make them a little less wordy or kind of eliminate some of the redundancies in them. So anything that's blue was the incorporation of an administrative policy that was already in place. And then anything that is highlighted in orange were the actual changes that I made to current manual language. So we had professional development, just a procedural thing that was changed. We had our medical, dental, life, and vision. We had added employee paid vision insurance. So that was incorporated because that was a new benefit that was added. The employee 100% pays for if they so choose. And then the next three are really the big ones. We had added paid personal time for 3 days, which is use or lose, not paid out upon separation. And that was in exchange for removing the award of up to 3 paid personal days for no use of sick leave. So given the current environment with the pandemic, encouraging people to not use sick leave and awarding them for not using sick leave is not really something that's a smart incentive. So removing that and just replacing that with paid personal time was the exchange. And then the addition of parental leave that would be good for a male or female upon the birth or adoption of a child in conjunction with the FMLA leave. So that would be 2 weeks paid leave provided to either a mother or father. And then the other one is unlawful discrimination and harassment, just including a zero tolerance clause for discrimination and harassment in the workplace. We had a statement for workplace violence, but we did not for discrimination and harassment. And I thought that that was really important to include that as well. So that is a summary of the changes. So hopefully this one-page document that points out the page numbers and the sections and the changes was helpful to council. So if anybody would like to see anything different for the public hearing, I can absolutely incorporate that.
Any questions or further discussion by council?
Yeah, I just had one question. Under 6.2 for the unlawful discrimination and harassment. In my day job, I write technical requirements to put on contracts. The term such as can lead to ambiguity. In section A, it lists protected class such as, and it goes into the explanation. I would recommend eliminating such as. And also the definition on the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has essentially the same wording that you have there, except after sex, it has in parentheses, including pregnancy, sexual orientation, or gender identity in parentheses. Could we just reference the same text as the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission?
TJ, if you could maybe email me those details just so I'm clear.
Copy that.
So if council would be okay with that suggestion, then this could be approved with those recommended changes. So just a formality there. So, but
Yeah.
if you could, if council wishes to proceed in that manner, just email that to me so that I'm clear.
Copy that. Doing it right now.
Any more comments or questions from council?
Those are very astute observations. Thank you, TJ.
There's no further discussion. Can I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-9 as amended?
Yes, I'd like to adopt ordinance number 2020-9 as amended.
Thank you. Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nick.
A motion was made by Mr. Greenwood to introduce ordinance 2020-9, an ordinance adopting the revised City of Bellbrook Personnel Manual as amended, and this was seconded by Mr. Edwards. Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes,
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up is ordinance 2020-10. Councilman Havens, please.
Ordinance number 2020-10, an ordinance amending ordinance 2020-5 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2020 and declaring an emergency. Whereas the City of Bellbrook adopted the 2020 annual budget based on the best information available at the time, and whereas additional costs have or will occur in some line items, which requires amendment of various appropriation levels. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains Section 1 that the 2020 appropriation levels in several of the funds listed below be amended as follows. And I'll just hit the highlights here. General Fund, Legislative, adjustment of $2,500. The Street Fund, an adjustment of $84.63. Coronavirus, which is the main factor here, is an adjustment of $324,955. And a performance bond fund of $4,000. Section 2, this ordinance is presented as an emergency measure in order to ensure proper appropriation of the funds within the Coronavirus Relief Fund guidelines outlined in House Bill 614, which must be encumbered prior to November 20, 2020. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. So as Melissa explained to me, basically we have a timeline we have to meet to spend the coronavirus money, and based on the way our rules are written, to spend the money that quickly, we have to declare it an emergency. Is that correct, Melissa?
That's correct. Typically, based on our regulations, ordinances, once they are adopted, which it would be at the next meeting, they don't go into effect until 30 days afterwards, which would put us at November 26th, and the funds have to be encumbered by November 20th. So in order to be able to expend the funds within the parameters of House Bill 614, we do have to declare this as an emergency. So there were 3 other funds that had just very minor adjustments, just because if I'm going to go ahead and go through and make any kind of adjustments to our appropriations, I did add in a few small things. But the $324,955 is round 2 and 3 of the coronavirus relief funds that we will be receiving. We received round 2, and I didn't check today to see if round 3 was deposited yet, but once round 3 is deposited, we have to expend $445,571, and we only had appropriations of $120,616 as of just prior to this ordinance. So the bulk of this is to allow us to expend those coronavirus relief funds, which we can talk more about kind of where we are when I give my CM update as well.
Melissa, out of curiosity, what was the $4,000 for the performance bond fund?
So basically, that's an in and out fund where
Right.
we take in bonds for various builders for different things. So we never know how many bonds we're going to bring in, and that directly correlates to the bonds that we have to refund possibly. So it's pretty much an in and out for the most part. So there were going to be some that we expended a few more than what we had anticipated at the beginning of the year.
Okay, thanks. Any more discussion or comments on ordinance 2020-10? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-10.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Was the second
Dr. Dave.
Dr. Dave? Thank you. Sorry. A motion was made by Mr. Havens to introduce ordinance 2020-10 and ordinance amending ordinance 2020-5 to adjust the City of Bellbrook appropriations for 2020 and declaring an emergency. This was seconded by Dr. Van Veldhuizen. Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Hope,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
yes,
Mrs. Middlestetter,
yes,
Mr. Edwards,
yes,
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. That concludes our introduction of ordinances. We'll have public hearings on these ordinances at our next meeting. Next up on the agenda is resolutions. Tonight we have two. Resolution 2020-Z. Deputy Mayor Edwards, please.
thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 2020-Z, a resolution ensuring equity, diversity, and inclusion in all City of Bellbrook staff, council, and board actions. Whereas the City of Bellbrook recognizes that several tragic events have occurred in our nation in 2020, causing deep pain and emotions as a result of the injustice toward the Black American population, and whereas the City of Bellbrook recognizes that historically government policies and actions across our country have contributed to marginalizing and excluding people of color from having equal access and opportunities. And whereas, in addition to the light being shed on injustice toward the Black American population, the City of Bellbrook also recognizes the fact that other populations have also been subject to discrimination and exclusion as a result of race, gender, sexual orientation, and religion. And whereas the Council for the City of Bellbrook is charged with creating and adopting policies to best serve our community, and whereas the City of Bellbrook is dedicated to ensure the inclusion of all is at the forefront in all we do. Now, therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves that Section 1, the City of Bellbrook is fully committed to providing equity and inclusion and will strive to create a welcoming and safe community for all. Section 2, we pledge as a City Council to advance equity by ensuring that our policies, programs, and practices are inclusive and strive to promote diversity. Section 3, City Council, boards, commissions, and all staff pledge to work collaboratively to support a high quality of life and access to opportunity for all community members. Section 4, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced forthwith. So I'll shed a little bit more light on this. Over the past several weeks in this past summer, I approached our city manager to talk about how we can reiterate our position on ensuring equity and diversity and all the things mentioned in the resolution. And after working collaboratively together with Melissa and getting input from our council, this is a document that we came up with, which I think covers pretty much the key points of what we're trying to accomplish and making sure that Bellbrook is fully committed to promoting equity, inclusion, and we'll have policies and procedures that strive to promote this. I don't know if anyone on council has any comments or questions they want to ask.
I just want to add, I know there have been some events that have occurred within our city that were supported well by our police. And I just wanted to add that, you know, resolution aside, if anyone has any issues in our city, my email, my phone, I could be reached at, and I'm sure other council members would do the same. We obviously would want to identify any issues as soon as possible and address them.
Thank you, TJ. I think that's a good point.
Thanks, Nikki and TJ, because I think goes for all council members, because we're certainly want to be very inclusive, and we certainly don't want any actions to indicate otherwise. And this is a document that'll live with us and not just a piece of paper that we'll sign our names to.
Exactly.
Anything else to add by anyone else on council?
I'd just like to make a few comments, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'm on the representative for the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. 1st of October, we passed a resolution, and August, we voted one down. In August, I think everybody was kind of questioning, didn't realize exactly what was going on, and didn't really understand systemic racism. And between August and October, the people talked with each other. There was some groups that I talked with, and some of the people from Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission explained a lot of issues with systemic racism, where it's at. I think a lot of members and regular citizens are unaware of a lot of things about systemic racism. Systemic racism is a form of racism that is embedded as normal practice within society or an organization. I felt, and I think a lot of people feel, uncomfortable confronting racism and systemic racism. I don't feel I am complicit with racism, but after discussing racism with people from the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission and meeting with the Sugar Creek Cares Group, I'm more at ease moving forward as a council member. I learned that systemic racism is buried in a lot of places, and places like personnel manuals, zoning, walkability policies. By not learning and being aware of systemic racism could make one complicit. A public official must be aware and take action if racism exists. The bottom line is to listen and be aware and to address systemic racism. And I'd just like to read just one piece that came out of the resolution from the Miami Valley Regional Planning. The one piece that they found in 2017 was development in the Dayton area wasn't allowed in the west part of Dayton. And that was a policy that was still written. And that was just one small thing. So our resolution, I think, is going to be great. It addresses the problems. And just knowing about it and thinking about it, you run across things sometimes. And as long as we got an open mind, and like the mayor said, it's an open document that we'll probably live by. And I think it's good. That's all I got.
Thank you, Forrest. Does anyone else on council have any comments or discussion on ordinance or resolution 2020-Z?
Thank you, Mayor. I definitely wanted to thank all the council members for taking a serious look at this and providing input. I think we've got a good document at this stage.
Thank you, Ernie. Any other comments or questions?
This somewhat reminds me of when the Old Village Review Commission was established, trying to establish how people observe things and look at things. The intent is righteous and good, and I'm totally for it. How you write it into law becomes the questionable part, because it's not, it shows intent. It's not by specific item. So I'm glad that we're at least addressing the issue. What's going to make it work is the change in people's hearts and minds.
Thank you, Elaine. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion regarding resolution 2020-Z.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2020-Z.
Thank you, Nick. How about a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Forrest.
A motion was made by Mr. Edwards to adopt Resolution 2020-Z, a resolution ensuring equity, diversity, and inclusion in all City of Bellbrook staff, council, and board actions. This was seconded by Mr. Greenwood. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. Hoke?
Yes.
Mr. Havens?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen? I can see
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Mayor Schwaller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Now that we've run the entire gamut of the alphabet in our resolutions, our next resolution is resolution 2020-AA. Councilman Hoke, please.
Yeah, I want to start off. If you hear any children crying in the background, they just got home, so I apologize.
Problem.
For resolution number 2020-AA, a resolution recognizing October 18th through the 24th of 2020 as Stormwater Awareness Week. Whereas urban stormwater runoff impacts water quality in the Little Miami watershed in the city of Bellbrook, and whereas population growth, residential and commercial development, and the resulting changes to the landscape will only increase stormwater quality and quantity concerns throughout Ohio. And whereas these impacts cannot be entirely avoided or eliminated, but can be minimized. And whereas it is currently recognized that control of stormwater quantity and quality is most effectively implemented when people and organizations understand the related causes and consequences of polluted stormwater runoff and flooding, and the actions they can take to control these. And whereas the need arises not only from the regulatory requirements of EPA general construction and municipal stormwater rules, but also from the recognition that citizens and local decision makers will benefit from a greater awareness of how the cumulative impacts of decisions at home, at work, and through local policies impact our water quality, stream corridors, and flooding. And whereas the development and implementation of effective outcomes-based stormwater education and outreach programs will meet the related federal stormwater pollution control requirements and those of the communities they serve, so that Ohio continues to be a great place to live, work, and play. Now, therefore, the city of Bellbrook hereby resolves that Section 1, the city of Bellbrook joins soil and water conservation districts and communities across Ohio in recognizing the week of October 18th through the 24th as Stormwater Awareness Week. Section 2, that this resolution shall take effect and be in force forthwith. Yeah. The end.
Thank you, TJ. Anything to add to that, Melissa?
This was brought to our attention by Hope Taft, and she had asked that the city consider passing this resolution. And since we know that we are so incredibly impacted by stormwater issues, that it was important to put out there and just gain awareness of the week, and just a chance for us to just promote that. So I'll be giving a copy of this to Hope Taft for her collection of resolutions that are honoring this week.
Very good. I fully support it. Any more comments or discussion amongst council?
Yay, yay.
Absolutely. Anything else? With that, we have a motion regarding resolution 2020-AA.
I will put forward a motion.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
A motion was made by Mr. Hoke to adopt Resolution 2020-AA, a resolution recognizing October 18th through 24th as Stormwater Awareness Week. This was seconded by Mr. Edwards. Mr. Hoke,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
Yes.
Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
yes,
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes,
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Thank you, Pam. Next up on the agenda is the city manager report.
This is fairly short and sweet. So North Bellevue update, construction is nearly complete and they will be paving this week. We thought that they were going to pave last week, but they had some shifting in the paving schedule, so it will be paved. So that project was supposed to be completed October 31st, and we're going to be ahead of schedule, which is great, seeing as how we were delayed with the grant and trying to get all of that done before we could give the notice to proceed. So that's going to be really exciting. So that is going to be happening. And our electric vehicle charging grant was submitted on September 28th. There was a nice front page article in the Dayton Daily News covering it. I was kind of surprised that there were so few municipalities that were going after that. So hopefully that makes our odds a little bit better of getting them. So we were asking for one to go at the library and one to go at the city building. So our hope is maybe we get one of those. So we should know that mid-January is what that target is for. So I'm going to skip over one thing. Fire chief search. Jim Neidhart is retiring as of December 31st. And so our search has officially kicked off today. So the posting information is on our website. I will be going through and trying to identify various places to post and solicit for that as the week goes on. So I do have a number of recommendations of places to post. So I will be going through and getting that done, but it is on our website, which makes it live, and we will be accepting resumes through October 23rd. So then after that, we'll go through interview process and things like that, and I'll keep council updated. So
Hey,
coronavirus, oh, I'm sorry.
Melissa, will council be involved in the interview process at all? I think the last time that we hired police and fire, I think the city manager narrowed the field down. I think we may have talked to, like maybe the top 2 candidates. I don't remember the exact number. I was just wondering if we were going to follow
It's top 2 or top 3. Yeah, you're right.
I did earmark second interviews in the schedule, so I had not finalized that with you guys yet. But if council wants to do that again, I did forward room for that in the schedule to be able to do that.
I think that was very worthwhile that we did that.
Okay.
I think last time, if I remember correctly, we just had it open for anybody on council who wanted to attend, because there's some folks that couldn't, but we wanted to keep the process moving forward. So we took whoever's available to meet at that second interview.
Okay, so you guys interviewed 2 or 3, do you recall?
I would say maybe just 2.
I think it was just 2 for the fire department.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Elaine. I think it was too.
And it was the same night, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I did a forward room in the schedule for that. So I will definitely follow up at the next meeting to see what might work for everybody for that. Last thing that I have is coronavirus relief funds update. So House Bill 614 was approved at the last meeting. We knew that that was a possibility. So I was really shocked at the amount that that was bringing. So we are getting an additional 264,647, which is the largest installment to date. So we've received 2 other installments, and this is the third, and I believe it to be the final, but I thought we were only going to get 1 installment and we got a second. Now we're getting a third. So our total funds received, as was stated with our supplemental appropriation ordinance, is $445,571.42. So we have to have it encumbered by November 20th. It was October 15th, but that would have been really hard, seeing as how I'm not even 100% sure if we received the funds today. We had not received them as of Friday. So it's going to give us some much needed time to be able to sort out where exactly those expenditures are going to go. So I did provide a 1-page sheet attached to the CM update with some of the projects that we have. Some of them we've completed, some of them we are still trying to finalize. So right now, with what we have spent to date and what we have projected, we've got an estimated total of $89,407.47 right now. So some of those projects were the community grant that went to the Family Resource Center, remote work capabilities, which is where we're going to spend even more money. Just getting our network a little more secure, doing some of the projects that are necessary to do some of that remoting in that we had not anticipated before. We did some public meeting chamber upgrades, or council chambers upgrades, city building public Wi-Fi. That project is already live and completed. So we have, within a 1-block radius of our city building, is a public Wi-Fi hotspot that's attached to our building, which did not increase our monthly costs at all, just the cost of the access point. We bought some touchless equipment and some foggers for sanitation. We're going to be buying an additional police bike to afford officers the ability to be on a bike versus trading in and out of cruisers, and hopefully providing a little more open air patrol, which is obviously a better health, better for their health in a number of ways. Library outdoor seating. So one of the things that we're doing is the library had no outdoor seating, and there's such a small space in the first place that we're going to get some outdoor seating. We ordered some picnic tables and some benches to go outside for folks to be able to sit outside and be able to distance appropriately. We're upgrading the doors on the library to be touchless, so that'll be nice. So those doors will be able to open automatically and avoid those high touch surface areas. So that's a big win. City building doors, same thing. Touchless entry for the main entrance is going to be upgraded, and upstairs on the second floor, that's going to be upgraded as well. And then we're going to get a new gear washer for the fire station. So we haven't even spent $100,000, and we've got $445 to spend. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to go down through our list of projects that we are coming up with and determining the feasibility of, because all of these things have to be installed by December 30, or actually I think it's the 28th. So we have to make sure that A, we can identify a solid project that qualifies, and B, we have to make sure that it's going to be able to be installed and completed by the deadline as well. So whatever we do not spend in terms of our projects, we're going to put towards police and fire wages. So that's where we'll put the remaining amount of funds, because we know that we could put the money there for sure. So that's kind of where we stand with coronavirus relief funds, if anybody has any questions about that or anything else.
Melissa, there was an article in the paper about the city of Dayton, and they're buying paint for the walls that can be germ-free and so forth and so on. Are there any other things like that, thinking outside the box, that would make sense? And secondly, as Tim talked about tonight, apparently we're not storing our turnout gear properly for the fire department. Is that something we can somehow find funding for in this additional funding?
So the first thing I can answer, when I saw that article myself, I immediately forwarded that link to our supervisors to say, okay, here's some creative ideas. does any of this apply to us? So I did share that article with them and we did have some discussions. Most of our building is wallpaper. So, that adds another element to it, but we can definitely entertain that. So with the turnout gear, that is a good question, and I'll follow up with the fire chief tomorrow on that one.
Okay.
It seems that the deadline is incredibly short for just encumbering that amount of money, especially since they know that this virus and the pandemic is going to extend well into next year. I just don't understand the very, very short turnaround times on being able to use the funds. That it doesn't make sense to me unless it's got something to do with accounting.
So the state is the one that had extended the encumbrance deadline, but the federal deadline is the one that's at the end of the year. So I have heard that there have been talks of changing that at the federal level, but I don't think that there's been any traction yet. But I mean, all of this happens, very quickly. So it may end up extended.
It's just that there's so many things that are happening and changing so fast to authorize and spend that kind of money just because it's there and try to search for ways to spend it that goes against my grain. I don't like that.
Elaine, you're not alone in that regard, but I can tell you that the payroll protection loans and any number of these programs that have been COVID-19 related have had a lot of movement, a lot of changes, and a lot of last minute activity. So conceivably, we could have some activity in late December that may extend that date forward.
I would hope.
It's one of those things we had just take it a day at a time.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to make a more informed decision.
Correct. Any other discussion on the COVID-19 funding?
A quick question. You mentioned the money could be applied to police and fire salaries. Would that then allow money then to be taken out of the police and fire fund and put into general fund, or does it just have to stay there and it's encumbered and it carries over to the following years?
So we have police and fire levies that can only go towards that money. So the money that are in those funds, it can't go anywhere else. It's restricted.
Okay.
Well, so one other comment on the North Bellevue thing. I've heard nothing but great comments on it. I see Ryan Paisley's on tonight, and I want to certainly extend my thanks to the city staff and also to the service department for what was a monumental issue that became kind of a transparent, seamless fix. Fortunately, we got some Ohio Public Works money to fund the operation, but I think it's turned out to be a win-win. And I don't know if anybody feels otherwise, but I just think that it's happened very quickly. It's certainly on time. It's going to be done ahead of schedule. I'm just very pleased with the progress. And that's the first time in a while we've taken on a major, emergency type situation. It just shows that our response was, in my estimation, exceeded expectations and very excellent from a time standpoint. Any other comments or questions regarding the city manager report? Seeing none, we can move on. The next item on the agenda is old business, of which we have none. New business, I'm not aware of any. And that brings us to our committee reports. First up tonight is service.
Thank you, Mayor. Newspapers and different places, Legionnaire's bacteria has been on the rise mainly because of homes and businesses. Buildings have been vacant or sparsely inhabited. Water lines are dormant or not used. The water in the pipes can lose chlorine. With no chlorine, bacteria can grow. So when you turn on the first blast of water, it can have a lot of bacteria. To prevent this, periodically run all traps to bring in fresh chlorinated water, home or building that has been vacant. Make sure this is done before water is used. Also, sewer traps can dry out and allow our sewer gas. Make sure you pour some water in those. And just an example, our service department, they flush the end of water mains, like where the end of the main is, they flush those out just to do the same thing. They do that periodically. One of the great things they do it, nobody notices. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Forrest. Safety.
Nothing from me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, TJ. Finance and audit.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of important dates. Work sessions are going to occur at our next two council meetings, October 26th and November 9th, to have discussions with administration and service departments, and then police and fire on their capital budgets. The budget ordinance will be introduced on November 23rd, and then the public hearing on the budget ordinance will be December 14th. So those are some important dates that are coming up here in the next couple months. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Community affairs.
Nothing new from community affairs yet.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. The clerk update. Pam Timmons, the floor is yours.
All right, well, Nick stole a lot of the thunder.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. With the upcoming work sessions that we have. So those will be the next two council meetings. We'll start with work sessions on budgeting, and then the November 23rd meeting will begin with a work session that will be a discussion that combines the CIC discussion from last week or 2 weeks ago at the last meeting with the fire station consolidation discussion from tonight's meeting. Other legislation that's going to be coming forward are things that have been going through planning board. There's the update to the sign code 1820B, and a change to vacancy registrations in the city, and also an update of Article 14. So a lot of stuff coming through planning board that you'll be seeing. And that's it for me.
And Pam, I for one appreciate the future agenda items appearing on our agenda for each meeting, so we can kind of stay in track with what's going on. And I like reaching out about the next 3 months, because that gives us an idea of what's coming before us. So if we can keep that up, I'd like to see it continued. Thanks. Okay, that brings us to open discussion of council. We can start off tonight with Forrest.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank Melissa and her staff, all the employees of the city of Bellbrook. Appreciate all their hard work under these conditions. It's not easy. And as we can see, we've had a lot of extra work that's still going on and still getting done. So thank everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Ernie.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things to touch on. Last week, I spent the day with the Lions Club on Thursday, doing some work with the new community support center. There's a lot of changes happening with that organization, including classes that the residents can attend. It's definitely worth as a resident checking into. There are a lot of new resources coming about with the new management, and I think any resident that would look into that would be very pleased to see the changes coming. And I also encourage you to reach out to the community support center and see how you might be able to help. I'd like to thank Melissa for probably the most thankless thing she's done in a while, which is digging through the personnel manual and making all of those updates. That is something that will pay off in dividends down the road. And I definitely appreciate you doing that very mundane task. I want to thank Hope for pointing out the storm water runoff week coming up. And I'd like to encourage the residents to actually give that some thought. All the houses, or many of the houses, I should say, in Bellbrook are sitting on top of our drinking water, and all the runoff that comes from the city flows right over our drinking water. So I would encourage all residents to take that seriously. Don't pour your motor oil over your fence posts. Take it to the auto parts store. Think twice about applying chemicals to your grass, things like that. It is really important. Even storage of chemicals that you might not want to deal with over time and letting them build up. Accidental spillages can really impact the environment badly in those situations. So just give us some thought, please. Over the past few months, I've heard a lot of folks wish that we had, as a city, attacked the Bellevue Bridge more quickly. I was definitely one, as well as others, to say, hey, let's slow down. I'll take the hit for that. But the reason for that was to make sure that we spend the taxpayer money wisely and find outlets to possibly get it paid for. And that definitely paid off. So I want to thank all of the residents in that area for their patience. And then lastly, the updates that Pam is providing. First of all, thank you, Pam. I agree with the mayor. Those are very helpful. And it's also really good for the residents of the community to take a look at, see what's coming up, see what we're going to be talking about next month and the month down the road. And if there's something that concerns you, absolutely reach out to one or more council members. Our contact info is on the website. Share your thoughts, because those changes are coming. And if there's something that affects you, this is an opportunity to really let us hear you. And we haven't heard a lot from the residents, and hopefully this is a change that we're making that will encourage that. So thank you.
Thanks, Ernie. Councilman Hoke.
Yeah, nothing real formal. I just wanted to thank Elena Fitzner for working around my schedule and getting my official picture for the website for City Council. Thank you, Elena. Very hard task to get a photograph of me that looks somewhat legible. And I also wanted to just congratulate the Bellbrook High School football team for their excellent season this year and wish them well in the playoffs. Kind of stemming from that, also want to thank all the people who volunteer for the youth sports within our community. At one night, I was at my son's football practice. I saw fall baseball going on, a number of soccer games and practices, and football and cheerleading. I'm pretty sure about half the town was present at one moment in the park. Just want to thank all the people who volunteer to make those events happen, giving a meaningful place for our children to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Elaine.
Well, you all said everything I had on my list, so I will just ditto what you all said, and that's what comes from being at the end of the line.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Dave.
Well, I was going to say what Elaine said, but no, actually just very quick. I was surprised. My neighborhood is not really close to Bellevue, yet that's been a popular topic up here. When is it going to get fixed and what's going on? And a lot of folks are glad to see that done. I'm also close to Patricus Park and the tennis courts down there. And I guess the new pickleball courts are seeing a lot of use. And just being fall, I think Elaine said once that she considered Little Sugar Creek one of the more pretty drives in Ohio. And this time of year, I'm taking that street every time I can. So that's it for me this week, Mayor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Edwards.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Anthony, Beverly, and John and Matt for their service and their commitment to the city. You know, we can't get it done without dedicated employees, and it's nice that we have longevity and experience, and again, just appreciate their efforts.
Thank you, Nick. And again, I'd like to congratulate and thank our employees who had milestone anniversaries and all the employees we have in the city of Bellbrook. They do a wonderful job for us, and it's nice to recognize those with milestones. Unfortunately, we can't do it in person, but certainly it'll be handled otherwise, and Pam will, or I guess Melissa will make sure they get their awards, and at least they got their day in the sun on our Zoomcast council meeting. The other thing I wanted to bring up just briefly is I had the opportunity to tour the Greene County Career Center on September the 30th. And it's not necessarily close to Bellbrook, but it's very accessible, about 15-20 minutes away, and it is a fantastic facility built with our taxpayer money. I would encourage you that if you have not already looked at it, to at least drive by and check it out. They're very accommodating with tours. It's a relatively new facility, and they're very proud to show you what they have. If you have children that would be interested in attending it, it's a fantastic facility. They really fixed it up right, and I think we've really done the right thing with it. In that regard, I've asked the Public Information Administrator, and possibly in conjunction with the superintendent, to come and give us a brief presentation sometime in 2021 on the Career Center. But it's an outstanding resource we have in the county. It's not exactly next door to Bellbrook, but again, 15-20 minutes away. And it's something a lot of people aren't aware of, but it's something that is worthwhile to make our citizens very much aware of.
Mike, is this the new one in Xenia? Not the one that was way far out in the country?
This is the new one in Xenia, absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, that's relatively close. That's not a big drive at all. The other one was kind of like driving to the ends of the earth.
Yeah, it's about 15 to 20 minutes. You think you're driving for a real long way, but it's very close by, and it's a just an outstanding facility, and we did the right things when we built that. That concludes the open discussion of council. I know we have some people in the viewing audience. At this point in time, we'd open up to public comments. Each attendee is entitled to 3 minutes. We ask that you give your name and address and stick to the 3-minute limit. I'll ask our clerk of council, Pam, to be our official timekeeper.
All right, and the first person who asked to speak is Meredith Brenniger. So
Okay.
I think she should be on.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Welcome, Meredith.
Well, thank you for allowing this. So I'm Meredith Brenniger, and I live at 2221 Ivy Crest Drive in Bellbrook. And I'm speaking here on my own behalf, but also as part of Sugar Creek Cares, a local grassroots group that is focusing on how to be anti-racist. And I just wanted to let you know that we were moved and deeply appreciative of the resolution 2020Z that you passed tonight. The depth and specificity of the language, how it framed the current landscape with race was well done. So thank you for that. You know, we certainly hope that this will be a document that prompts ongoing action, right, to make sure that the values stated here are executed. And I know most of you mentioned that as well. And we certainly are happy to be ongoing conversation partners about this, right? Whether it's looking at some of the systemic racism that Forrest mentioned about, you know, some of these benign policies, right, that on the surface don't look harmful, but can have disparate outcomes, right? Or whether it's, you know, city council or employees get extra training, you know, in this area, or how racism impacts at the city level and community laws. So overall, we hope this continues. And again, our deep appreciation for passing this resolution. It has not gone unnoticed. So thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Next up is?
Yeah, mute myself. Next is Robin Logston.
Welcome, Robin.
Oh, hold on. I have to make her a panelist because I'm not sure why. But anyway, she should be logging on now. Robin, are you there?
I don't see her on the list right now.
Well, because I had to, because of the version of Zoom she has, it said I had to make her a panelist. So I moved her into a panelist slot.
Maybe she doesn't know to touch the screen to unmute herself or.
But
Yeah, I don't
does
think
not.
it's connected with audio.
Yeah, there's no mic
Okay,
listed next to her name.
I am sorry, Robin. I'm not sure how to fix that. If you want to try logging back in while I let the next person speak, and we'll see if we can get you back on. So I'm going to go ahead and move to, looks like it's Denise Moore.
Welcome, Denise.
Thank you, thank you. Meredith said everything that we needed to say. She's a very vital member of our team, but I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged Forrest Greenwood for attending our meeting the other day, and Melissa's help with allowing us to help in this regard, and we're here to help in anything else we can do. I will follow up with Melissa after this meeting later. Thank you very much, very, very, very much.
Thank you, Denise.
So
Has Robin been able to connect?
I am not seeing that she is. Let me check one more, try one more thing.
Could she possibly log in as an attendee and at least let us know that she would like to talk, and maybe she could?
Well, that's where she started out.
No, she's back on as an attendee, I see.
Oh, wait, she logged back in. Okay, hold on. Let's see if I can get her back on here. Robin, are you there?
Still no microphone icon.
I'm hearing some kind of talking in the really, really soft in the background. So I don't know if there's.
I'm not sure. So I do apologize, Robin, for not. Okay, I'm not sure she's going to be able to get through. She seems to have logged off for the moment.
Let's give it another minute or so. If we don't hear anything from her, we'll have to have her work out logistics and see if we can accommodate her for our next meeting. Any luck?
I do not see her.
Okay.
So
And Pam, maybe it's worth pointing out too on the agenda that people can call in. So we might want to put the phone number link on the agenda also, just in case.
Could we provide that phone number now? Would that make sense, or?
well, yeah, I'm sitting right by the phone, so it's what is our number here? 848, what is our number?
There's an actual phone number that would put it through the Zoom platform.
Oh, through the Zoom. Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you can call in to participate through the Zoom platform.
See if I can find that real quick.
It doesn't look like she's tried to get back in though, so.
No.
Even if we found it, she might not hear it necessarily, you know what I mean, to be able to
Is
get.
that this 312-626-6799 number? There's several listed.
Sounds about.
Robin, if you're out there, why don't you try calling in the number? And it looks like one of them is 312-626-6799. Still no word?
No, it doesn't look like she's tried to log back in. So.
Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up our meeting, and then if she wants to get a hold of us for the next meeting, we'll try to work in advance to make sure we can bring her on at the end.
Okay.
Does any member of
I'll
council
email
have
her.
any further business to bring before us this evening?
None, Mayor.
Seeing none, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a good night.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.